Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another exciting episode of All About You. In today's segment, we will be going over the top 5 best cards in UnionForce, which is set 2 for the Dragon Ball Super card game. Let's start with number 5. So, we are going to introduce you to what started a whole complete format during set 2 when Lord Frieza was legal, and that card was single-handedly Kale. She has been super impactful for the game since set 2. Her origin was in the Frieza deck where people were running green, blue, and yellow variants, specifically yellow and green. She was just there as a 4-drop, mind you, to be able to come onto the board, clear out whatever threats your opponent had, and then continually put on pressure while drawing you cards. So if you guys don't know what she does, first of all, she has critical. Second of all, she just costs 4 energy, 2 being green. And when she comes into play, you have to sack one of your guys, so get rid of one of your battle cards. In that case, you can target up to 5 energy cost cards on your opponent's side of the field and discard them. Not only that, but when you have 5 cards or less in your hand, when she attacks, you can draw a card. She has just been so powerful moving forward from set 2 going on to the set 3 format, which Shugesh became a thing. Veggies have became an archetype in that format, where Kaba was the sole purpose or sole force with this deck. Kaba allowed you to search for her and add it to your hand, while being able to use cards like Shugesh when you had Kaba in play to play her and bring her out for free. Then we had other cards like Khalifa, which allowed you not to have to sacrifice anyone on your side of the board, and you still were able to KO up to 5 energy cost battle cards on your opponent's side of the board. That's just insane. Like, you can't get any better than that. Not only this, but this card has been going through each and every format as being a powerhouse. She was used in multiple different Veggie decks, including SS3 variants, before the leader got banned. Not only this, but even in today's current format, she's being used in Team Wars. My friend Eric Hill dominated, went 6-0 during Swiss rounds in the team event using her, using 4 copies of her, because she is essential in a Veggie deck. Number 4, we have an extra card that has been ridiculous. It has been a way to remove any threat that your opponent may have, including threats that cannot be negated. So cards that would say this attack cannot be negated or this card's attack cannot be negated, this one card single-handedly can get rid of them temporarily, which will allow you as a player to make a comeback. And that card is Mafuba. Mafuba is one of the most interesting card types in the game's history. For one, it is an extra card that reacts on the attack of your opponent's battle cards. Its first line of effect is to negate the attack. But what's so interesting about this card is that even if the card cannot be negated, the card after it attempts to negate, it literally gets placed on your opponent's card. So even if the attack was never negated, your opponent's card will still blanket out of the game and would be caught up in a Mafuba trap, which would last for a period of 2 turns. This is just insane. It's great against decks like Victory Strike up to date, where your opponent will attack and it can't be negated, but you're like, nope, Mafuba, put it right on top and it stops it. But this bad boy came out in set 2 when we had a lot of other threats that were being menacing in the format, especially when we had cards like Kale. Kale would attack and get value, you'd be like, nope, Mafuba, which of course was number 5. So moving forward, this card has just kept getting better and better as sets moved along, because of the fact that it costs only 1 blue to cast and 1 generic. So most decks that are very low on the blue cost cards, this card can be slipped right into it, no problem. This card has great interactions with a lot of boss monsters. As you guys may be familiar with in Yu-Gi-Oh!, there are decks that win based off of having a specific condition met. Like Frieza, Universe 7, we had Victory Strike. Not only Victory Strike, but we had the Universe 7 Frieza that allowed you to control the game. But the moment they would attack, you use Mafuba, you stop them from continually controlling you throughout the entirety of the game. which means that Mafuba is one of the most badassery cards that there is in the game currently. Not only that, but they made this card into a reprint, and it comes foil. So that's the great part of this card. It's seen so much play throughout the series of this game that they decided, Bandai was like, hey, we gotta make this card a nice foil version of it so that players could see it and, you know, appreciate what the card has been doing. We're down to number 3. And ironically, I will be showing you 3 cards. The reason I am doing this is because this one card does not work without the others involved. One of them even got restricted to 1 copy per deck, which is insane because unfortunately the deck does not run properly without it being in max copies. But here we go. We have Growing Evil Lifeform Cell, Evolving Evil Lifeform Cell, and of course, Perfect Force Cell, which this chain has been one of the most destructive, toxic cards in this game's history. So essentially on turn 3, you can go from this bad boy to this guy to this guy in 1 turn consecutively if you control Android 17 and 18 in your hand. You Union Absorb, which Union Absorb became a new mechanic during this set's format, where you would go from this guy, put a 17 underneath of him, search your deck for this guy, put an 18 underneath him, search your deck for this guy. And this is where the game became ridiculous because this one guy pretty much says, I scoop up your hand. His ability is simple. All you do is, when he comes into play, your opponent must discard cards from their hand until they have only 3 or less. That's insane. So your opponent was never able to really build much of a hand or resources throughout the game because on turn 3, you summon this bad boy and you start getting rid of your opponent's hand if you control those 2 pieces I mentioned earlier. With that being said, he won the regional, the first ever regional that we had. Alejandro Mena ended up winning with this deck, just going through this chain. Vegeta was one of the most popular decks during that format, and he would get crushed by Cell because all Vegeta would do is accumulate massive hand advantage, having 10 plus cards in hand by turn 3, and then he would say, hey, drop all those cards from your hand and go down to 3 cards. So by turn 3, you had so many and you're losing almost every card in your hand due to 1 Cell chain. That was insane. Now, Bandai again decided much later, this is a recent thing that happened months ago, where they decided to restrict this one guy. So for this number 3 countdown, he is the reason why these became so powerful, especially Perfect Force Cell. So guys, this card was able to continually dominate several formats. I was able to have so much fun destroying my opponents, dropping their hands, and just winning so many events because of these bad boys. Essentially, this little guy equaled a 7 drop that had double strike, 30k, and dropped your opponent's hand. And when you drop your opponent's hand, what are the odds of them being able to remove him? They would have to now keep removal. And what happens if they're already at 4 or less life? You put pressure with the Cell chain, and now they're pretty much screwed. They have to keep resources or a negate in hand or something to prevent them from losing that same turn that you go through this chain. This was one of the strongest cards in this game's history. He could easily have been number 1 on the list. But there are 2 other menacing cards that we will discuss that even myself, I kind of wish they weren't created, even though I did enjoy using them as well. Moving on to number 2. We have a god of all gods. This one little guy is such a threat, even in this current format, that at first, when he was released, many people did not pay attention to him. As we moved along, we had one card that changed the game forever, and that card is Chain Attack Trunks. And if you don't know what he does, it became the Chain Attack Trunks and Zeno combination. Zeno he looks so innocent, but this guy, when he's put into play, he resets the entire game. Meaning, he comes into play, both players shuffle up all battle cards in play, ignoring barrier, and shuffle up their hands into their deck. And after the end of it, both players draw 5. This is like a morphing jar on steroids, if you're familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! This guy was able to single-handedly dominate formats. When Frieza was a thing, when Frieza was at maximum power, I ended up using that deck, and we had a player, his name is Danny Hype. People call him by that. He used this one guy. He was able to beat me in just top decking this one card. Off of a top deck, getting this one guy, and he was able to spin the game around and take it away. This card has seen so much play and has been devastating with cards and leaders like Pan, Baby Vegeta. Currently, this last past tournament, we had multiple chain attack Zeno-oriented decks top. He is a threat in the format and will continue being a threat because of what he can do. And Bandai even decided to make this guy a Judge promo because he came out in set 2, but they have a Judge promo version of this card, which is in awe, as you can see how amazing this card looks. It's just so powerful. There's not much for me to say. It was able to do so much from set 2, primarily set 3 and up, because when Chain Attack came out, that's when he saw play. Prior to that, Zeno was not a thing, because you need 7 energy. 7 energy is not easy to acquire. It's fair to pay 7 energy to restart the game. It's not fair when you could pay as little as 2 energy to restart the game. So, there you have it. Moving down to number 1. This bad boy is one of the most iconic cards in the game. He made blue unfair, took blue to another level single-handedly, had cards that were able to tutor for this one card, and was able to constantly manipulate your energy. By now, you should know the card I am referring to, and that is Unyielding Spirit Trunks. This card has been ridiculous during this card game's history. I, myself, built a red-blue Vegeta deck during the Set 2 format. Hardly anyone was using this card. Hardly anyone. In most builds, people would say just use Senzu Bean. Why waste space on another card like this? I built a red-blue Vegeta that changed the meta moving forward from that set and made Vegeta just a powerhouse to be recognized with. This deck allowed me to constantly untap energy. I ran 4 Senzu Beans and 4 of this bad boy when he was at 4 because, guys, he got restricted to 1. So notice the trend. I'm showing you cards from set 2 that's been restricted to 1. This is ridiculously crazy because set 2 had multiple cards that were restricted. I'm actually shocked that Zeno wasn't restricted, which was also going to meet, could have been number 1 on this list. But this card has been a force to be reckoned with throughout all the sets. His ability is when you combo with him, when you're attacking, you can untap any energy. Any energy. You could be untapped. I could bring out a Scientist Fu, for example, tap out, swing out. You're like, okay, how much can my opponent combo to? Hopefully not much. Then, as soon as you allow it to go through, if you have no negate, I play this one guy. This one guy equals to a Senzu Bean. That Senzu Bean equals to a bunch of 10Ks added to the combo. And before you know it, that Scientist Fu was hitting like 100K, no problem. This is what this card allowed many players to do and allowed the game to pretty much get broken, snapped in half, downright. We were able to destroy the game because energy manipulation is a mechanic of this card game. And if you have power over that, you're literally breaking the game, period. It's ridiculous. And Trunks has been used in every deck at 1. It's still been used at 1. If you're running blue, you run this card. And you guys all know my catchphrase, you know? So that is how strong a card like this can be. Not only that, but this card had tutors for it. And one of the tutors actually would have made the top 5, but the top 5 is just so stacked that I'm going to include this card in the top 7. And again, the 7 stands for the 7 Dragon Balls, okay? And that card is Mighty Mask. Active main. This card says you can place it in your drop area. In that case, search your deck for a Son Goten and Trunks Youth card and add them to your hand. You were able to, for one card, go up to 2 cards, which the most popular cards to search for was 1 being this guy, number 1 being him, number 2 being the Trunks Super Combo that was released during set 1, and the Goten that was able to pop a 3-drop or less during its time. Mighty Mask was one of the cards that made this card even stronger because of its ability to just search for it. Anytime you have in a card game cards that can tutor for another, especially another card that is unfair, that's when you're able to really destroy the game, and that's when decks become oppressive, okay? Now, moving down to the last card that would have made the top 7, Double Shot Vegeta. This guy, set 2, he was an okay card. You were able to defend yourself with this card. Not only this, but you would get a body on board. Simply put, when you combo with this card, at the end of the combo step, you put this card in rest position on your side of the field. So you gain a 15k battle card for the cost of 1 energy. Now, I'm going to show you multiple cards, which are the others from its predecessor. They all came out during set 2. These all have the same effect, but for per color. If your leader is red, you get a Vegeta on board. If your leader is yellow, you get a Frieza on board. If your leader is blue, you get a Son Gohan on board. They changed up the game, specifically Vegeta, because Vegeta currently works with the leader Pan. Pan's effect says when you play a battle card that has a power of 20k or above, you draw a card. And it works for your turn and your opponent's turn. When you play a battle card like this guy, when it comes into play, if it's the first card being played, it gains 5k, which means that he becomes a 20k battle card and you draw a card, which is so insane because it just allows you to filter through your deck, defend yourself, and makes it harder for your opponent to remove guys like this from board. That's the beauty of this card, and that's the beauty of this game. Those are the top 5/7 cards of that set. What are your top 5? What are your top 7s? Leave them in the comment section below, and let's talk about this. This game has been growing, and the history, it is building and building until we are going to get to a point where this game can be the #1 trading card game, period. Thank you all for watching, and as always, this channel is all about you.